This is a terrible one. U.S.'s Kirby, offended by Rafa charred bodies question. CBS posts this exchange. Here's John Kirby's press conference.
Has the president seen the images?
I don't know. I can't speak to what he has absolutely been. He's been kept apprised throughout the weekend on this.
So you're saying the tent encampment that was first struck is considered a densely populated area?
The whole area of Rafah, Ed, is densely populated. Now, there has been 1 million or so who have evacuated Rafah proper, but it's not like they're going all that far away. The whole area is densely
So
populated.
how does this not violate the red line that the president laid out?
As I said, we don't want to see a major ground operation. We haven't seen that at this point.
How many more charred corpses does he have to see before the president considers a change in policy?
We don't want to see a single more innocent life taken, and I kind of take a little offense at the question.
Oh, is that right? You're offended.
He's offended.
You're offended by the question.
Yeah. This reporter crossed a line there by describing events accurately.
Yeah, by describing
How dare
events
he.
as they happen. That's offensive to John Kirby. Wow. Let's hear that one more time.
Before the president considers a change in policy?
We don't want to see a single more innocent life taken, and I kind of take a little offense at the question. No civilian casualties is the right number of civilian casualties, and this is not something that we've turned a blind eye to, nor has it been something we've ignored or neglected to raise with our Israeli counterparts, including, Ed, this weekend as a result of this particular strike. Now, they're investigating it, so let's let them investigate it and see what they come up.
Rafah was the red line. Now, you're going to say that because they didn't go in on the ground and kill 45 people in tents, that this doesn't cross a red line because technically they did it using missiles from the air? Is that the distinction you're going to make? And you're going to get offended at his invocation of charred corpses? Because that's what happened. People were burnt alive in tents at a refugee camp. And you're going to say, well, this doesn't cross our red line because what? They didn't go in and shoot them. They did it from the air. That's that's what you're counting on here?
Well, and the media, which, let's face it, don't just report. They certainly have a point of view that they're not shy about conveying. And I don't think I've ever seen the media in modern times this conflicted about what point of view it's going to assume on an issue. They were doing this right up until they decided to go after the student protesters again and scapegoat them and make it all about their supposed anti-Semitism. And now they've swung back. You know, it's interesting. I've said I think there's a generational conflict going on in these newsrooms. Somebody who gets in that room is usually a careerist and a climber. That's how you get in that room for CBS. Somebody at CBS has to be taking the leash off because we saw how fast they snapped into a completely oppositional position in regards to the protesters all at once. The whole media all at once decided to go after the student protesters. Anyone who thinks they don't get calls from the White House that then defines their news coverage, look at how fast that change was. After the WCK kitchen attack, all of them going, what do you mean? Joe Scarborough screaming at their finance minister, you were funding Hamas. This went on for a couple of weeks. And then we think the Biden administration made some kind of deal with Israel to not go full bore on Iran and start World War III potentially.
Right, and that was at the time that Iran hit the Iron Dome with the missiles.
Right. All right. We've got to deal with Israel. Go after the protesters again. And on a dime. In one day, all of a sudden, the whole media complex turned. And now they're turning back. It's interesting. So you have to ask, is this just this is what I suspect. There's a younger generation in the newsroom reared on post-colonial studies for whom this is just a bit too much to stomach. And some of those people are producers and are allowing these kinds of questions to get through. while then you'll see these inside media anonymous source pieces about how higher ups within organizations like the New York Times are looking for leakers and getting very upset about what some of the reporters are saying and doing. It seems like you're having a war in the media. I think that's why you're getting such a weird, conflicted way of covering this.
It is. It is a very weird way of covering this because, I mentioned this, about a month ago, right when they started attacking the campus protesters again, right? I said, okay, now this is like back to November 2023. It's like we went through this whole cycle and now we're starting a cycle again, and we are starting the cycle again. It seems like now we are completing it on an expedited timeline because here we are just a few weeks after the cops came in and cracked heads on the campuses. We're back to this place. Meanwhile, the red line is not a red line. Meanwhile, the situation in Gaza seems to get worse and worse and worse. And we have more from Kirby here in a second.
But the president doesn't have like a personal limit to this?
The president has been very clear and very direct about what our expectations are for Israeli operations in Rafah specifically, but in Gaza writ large. We don't support, we won't support a major ground operation in Rafah, and we've, again, been very consistent on that. And the president said that should that occur, then it might make him have to make different decisions in terms of support. We haven't seen that happen at this point.
Why not have him come out and say that himself?
The president has been speaking to leaders throughout the region on a regular basis. He has been addressing you guys in various fora. You've got plenty of opportunities to talk to the president, including, I might add, in a press conference last week.
It's just such a disgraceful way of putting it. The guy asks, is there anything that's just over the president's line? What does he say here?
The president has been...
How does he phrase it here?
But the president doesn't have like a personal limit?
The president doesn't have a personal limit. That's the way he phrased it, which was a good question because that question implies that, look, you can parse an invasion on the ground versus a bombardment from the air. That doesn't really say much about your personal limit. As a person, as a human being, where does Joe Biden draw the line saying enough is enough when it comes to carnage? Okay? This question of how are people killed, that doesn't really address what his personal limit is. And Kirby says, well, he's been very clear what his personal limit is. His personal limit is a ground invasion. That's not a personal limit. That's not a personal limit. Like if you tell Israel, we don't want you going in on the ground, let's say they agree, right? Let's say, okay, fine, we won't put troops on the ground. We'll just hit them from the air. Is that better? That could potentially be even worse.
Right.
Because you're even less discriminate from the air. That's how a bomb lands in a refugee camp, right? So that's just a non-answer. That's just a complete dodge.
Yeah, well, these spokespeople for the White House, they're like tobacco lobbyists. They have no ethics. They have no morals. They're getting paid to go out and say whatever they're told to say, regardless of what the truth is. That's his job. That's his job. And I'm sure very much like a lawyer, they justify when they defend the guilty as well. It's a job, and it's up to the American voters to decide who they vote for, and this is my job, and somebody has to do this job, and I do it with the best of my ability. How else do you sleep at night in the middle of a genocide, going up and running cover for the administration's clear pro-genocide policy? They're just going to keep supporting Israel and occasionally making noises about how they might stop if they do this, and then they do this. And in fact, as we go on, I added a little bit to this piece. As we go on, you'll see Israel knows that. They spit right in his face. They spit right in his face. They went right into Rafah and said there's going to go on another 7 months.
Yeah, exactly. So this red line, which apparently has to do with how Rafah is bombarded, not whether or not to massacre the people of Rafah, but how to do it, right?
How to do it, right.
According to John Kirby, the president has been crystal clear on that, and he said numerous times, we are not okay with a ground invasion of Rafah. Well, Russell, as he just mentioned, you found this. So why don't you tell us what this is here?
Yeah, the subtitle of this headline is "Go Get Your Fucking Shine Box." Israel to Biden. Israel says Gaza war likely to last another 7 months as tanks probe Rafah. And I just got to say, yeah, they're probably reading the U.S. right, but are they reading the world right? The arrogance to believe that they're not going to come out of this diplomatically and economically isolated. You know, some people, when I say that, maybe I'm not cynical enough, say, no, they won't face consequences. I don't know, man. I mean, you can't force consumers to buy products.
Right.
So I don't see how they think they're doing this for another 7 months without being such a pariah and being so crippled economically that it's going to be pretty easy for the surrounding countries to take them out.
Yeah.
So just pulled a little bit of this. Israel sent tanks on raids into Rafah on Wednesday and predicted its war on Hamas and Gaza would continue all year after Washington said the Rafah assault did not amount to a major ground operation that would trigger a change in U.S. policy. Israeli tanks moved into the heart of Rafah for the first time on Tuesday, despite an order from the International Court of Justice to end its attacks on the city, where many Palestinians had taken refuge from bombardment elsewhere. The World Court said Israel had not explained how it would keep evacuees from Rafah safe and provide food, water, and medicine. Its ruling also called on Hamas to release hostages taken from Israel on October 7th immediately and unconditionally. All right, if this were any other country, or any country that we're not allied with, I should say, conducting itself this way, we'd call it a rogue state. Whoever its leader was, we would certainly make the Hitler comparison. It's a new Hitler. Their intentions are expansionist. You'd be hearing after Netanyahu takes Gaza, it's going to be Egypt next, and it's going to be the whole Middle East. You'd be hearing all of that. But no, it's our ally, man. You can do anything, and Israel knows it. And they don't, as we've pointed out. They don't care about Joe Biden getting reelected. Look at Trump. He's talking about deporting student protesters. They fucking love Trump. They love Donald Trump.
They helped Trump get elected
the first time. They would love to see him come back. They did.
Yeah.
You want to look for collusion? Look at Israel. What was it? The Nation.
The
Nation
did
a whole
whole
article about that.
Big write-up. Big feature about
a lot of the stuff that's fishy. It really is, but you're talking about the wrong country. The wrong country was behind a lot of these incidents that people point out as evidence of foreign collusion. It wasn't Russia, it was Israel. Yeah, there was foreign collusion with Israel.
Yeah, notice what's 7 months from now? January of next year. January of next year, we get a new president potentially, right? Also notice about this 7-month figure, because I remember this. I'm sure many of you in the audience have a pretty perfect memory of Netanyahu justifying the ground invasion of Rafah to Joe Biden by saying, we're almost done. We have almost completed our objective, right? 6 weeks ago, when Biden's saying, no, this is our red line, you can't do that. Netanyahu says, we have to do it. The war is almost won. We're this close. Once we go into Rafah, that'll be everything. Well, here they are saying, no, actually, we're only halfway through. We're only halfway through. What is this? 8 months? Another 7 months?
Well,
this is about
they're
half
halfway through. If your intention is to keep this area completely unlivable,
right?
So that you're really forcing a conversation about the surrounding countries having to take the refugees, probably with U.S. bribery money,
right?
So that you can start to build your 5-star hotels on the coast. You need 7 more months.
Yep, and that's what they want. So even that line about how, well, come on, don't stop us now. We're almost done. Maybe this is why they rejected all of those ceasefire deals. Remember, there was a full hostage exchange on the table back, I believe it was March, and Netanyahu turned it down because we need to achieve total victory. And his promise attached with that is that total victory is just around the corner. We can't stop now. We've come all this way. We're almost there. They're not almost there. They're not almost there. They want to be there throughout the year. Throughout the year, it's only May. They're saying 7 more months. They want to be there until January. Maybe that's why they turn those deals down.
Well,
because maybe
what
they
is,
never maybe they don't give a shit about. I mean, think about the slap in the face. Okay, the international community, they don't give a fuck about that. Think about the slap in the face this is to your own people who are protesting because they believe very strongly and rightly that you care more about your land grab in Gaza than you do about their family members who are being held hostage. Think what a slap in the face it is to them to say this is going to go on 7 more months. They're telling the families of these hostages they don't give a fuck about the hostages. That's what they're telling them when they say that.
right? Well,
And they say it anyway. They don't give a shit.
They
don't give a shit.
Well, they don't, because what's in Likud charter? From the river to the sea.
Right.
This is
Right.
a once maybe ever opportunity to go ahead and ethnically cleanse this neighborhood and make or this region, and to make from the river to the sea almost a reality. Why are they attacking the West Bank? They keep attacking people in the West Bank. There's no Hamas in the West Bank if it's about Hamas. They keep moving their settlers in. This is all part of a 76-year game that they've played with the international community. Now they're losing their Holocaust get out of jail free card. And I don't think they've processed what that means.
Yeah.
How can the world continue to do business with a state that's committed a fucking genocide in broad daylight and violated every international norm, defied every international court, just murdered women and children and men, non-military men, out in the open? In their arrogance and their confidence that the U.S. will always have their back and always be in a position to have their back. Frankly, what happens if the dollar collapses?
Right.
Chris Hedges called, I believe, 2028, and I'm in concurrence with him. As he wrote an article a while ago. I think he wrote a couple to this effect, that basically the empire has until 2028 before the chickens come home to roost. I agree with that number.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Please clap.